Miniature Market has thousands of board games at discounted prices. Click the direct link below to see all of those discounted games. Hello my friends, today we're going to be tapping on that keyboard, writing code and running code, trying to compile it. So today we're taking a look at Compile, which is a two-player tactical card game from Greater Than Games. Let me show you how it works and I'll see you on the other side. In Compile, there's 12 different protocols like Spirit, Speed, Water, Life, and so on. Now, each of these have a set of cards that go with them. At the beginning of the game, you're going to, through a drafting procedure, get 3 of these protocols and the corresponding cards. So you're not using every set of cards in each game, and you're mixing and matching because each of these have different types of strategies and abilities. For example, generally speaking, Water has abilities of like Return, Draw, and Flip. Life has Flip, Top deck play and draw, and Fire has discarding cards for an effect. And so each of those protocols come with 6 cards, and they range usually from 0 to 5. And let's talk about what these do, but again, each of these have their own deck. So from the 6 different cards from the 3 different protocols, I have 18 cards. I'm gonna shuffle them together, kind of like smash up, and make one big large draw deck. The opponent's gonna do the same. Now I'm showing these cards on the optional playmat. It doesn't come with the base game, but if you want to buy the playmat, you can get that separately. So here we have my 3 protocols. Here we have the other player's protocols. Usually they're facing the other player, but for the camera, I'm going to have them facing us for this play to make it easier for you. Now on your turn, most of the time you're going to play a card. You start with a hand of 5 cards, and you play a card into the line that is this protocol. This is Water, has to be played underwater. It's a value of 1. You're trying to get to a value of 10 or higher and have more than the other players. So here in the middle, you'll do that effect immediately. It says, play the top card of your deck face down in each other line. So face down, the cards look like this. They actually have values of 2, but they don't have any abilities, and it'll be the next player's turn. Now again, normally they'd be playing this so it's facing themselves. This is a 0, which doesn't give them a lot of power to try to get towards 10, but it forces their opponent, which is us, to discard a card. So we'd have to discard a card. And this says if your opponent cannot play cards, so these are like ongoing things. Your opponent cannot play cards in this line. So now I can't play over there in Water. So now let's say I play this. This says flip one other card, then draw 2 cards. Now I can flip one of these cards. Now anytime you're messing with a card, you can only mess with one that's on top, like this, this, or this. So cards that you put on top are technically protected for the time being, but I could also do an opponent's. I could flip the other opponent's card, but you could also flip your own. Now this is face down. If something's face down on your side, you can actually look at it, and this is discard a card. If you do, return a card. Is that an ability I really want? Not really. So let me flip one other card and then draw 2 cards. Well, guess what? Even if the other opponent played on this, it would cover these abilities. They'd no longer be active. But because of that, I'm flipping this, which means I can now play on that Water side again. So it's a lot of back and forth. And this one says, like, when this card would be covered, first draw a card and flip one other card. So again, different things that some of them happen on specific triggers. Aha, but this player has a good play here. They're gonna play the Gravity 2. Flip one card and shift that card to this line. Well, they wanna flip their own like this, and then shift this card to this line. Now it's a 0, but now the opponent has to discard a card because this has been triggered, and the opponent cannot play here. So now I can't play in this middle line, and they still have 2. So you can see that there's lots of different things in play here and lots of different strategies you can take. Now let's say it's my turn, and I have at least 10, and I have more than my opponent. At this point, you would compile. This one says loading. I'd flip it over. You are now 1/3 of the way winning because once you've compiled all 3, you win. You delete these cards, which means they go in your discard pile. But you also the other player just deletes his cards in that line, and it gets sort of opened up there. But you have to waste a whole entire turn to do so. Now you can still play cards into this line, and you might say, well, why do you want to do that? Well, number one is if you compile this again, it still deletes the other player's cards. So they might be close to getting to 10, you're able to race there and beat them. You don't flip this card again, but you get to delete all their cards, and you get to draw a card off from their deck into your hand, which is kind of cool. But another reason why you might want to do this is, look at this. I have 2 here and 2 here. They don't have anything here. I'm beating them in 2 columns. So at this point, at the beginning of your turn, if you're beating in 2 lines, you get to take this control card, which is really cool, because on your turn, instead of playing cards, you can do one thing called refreshing, and that's basically drawing back up to 5 cards. That's how you get more cards in your hand. So if you refresh, or you compile on your turn, and you have this, if you want to, you can return this back to the middle, and then you can rearrange protocols from any one player. So I could be like, well, I'm doing good in this one. That's not there. This is still loading. I still need to get this. That's fine. But this one here, They have gravity. They are pretty far. They're up to 6 here. They had already compiled speed. I could go like this. And now this, great. If they get it, it's going to delete all my cards in that line, and I can draw a card from my deck, but they're not going to get another card flipped. So you can mess with that, or sometimes you want to swap yours. So this is a very interesting thing, because at the beginning of your turn, you take it. But let's say at the beginning of the other player's turn, they have it. They take it back from you. So you're trying to get this, find the right time to use it, but it's a little bit of pressure of luck because you're trying to actually use it before the other player takes it back from you. That's pretty much the game. And you're going to play until any one player has all 3 of these flipped and compiled. That player wins. There's also a mini expansion called Auxiliary Unit 1, which comes with 3 more protocols and 6 cards for each of them: Apathy, Love, and Hate. Now here's some of my favorite cards from these decks. Apathy. You get to flip all other face-up cards in this line. And line means like yours and your opponent. So you can really wait till they have a bunch. You play that, make them flip all theirs, and now they're down to 2s. This one is your total value in this line is increased by 1 for every face-down card. So you could have a bunch of 2s over there, and you have this ongoing ability. Or this ongoing, which is ignore all middle commands on the cards in this line. So you play this up early, and then as players are playing middle things that are very powerful, it's not gonna hurt you much. Also, when this card would be covered, you first flip the card. Now, Hate here is all about deleting. So you delete your highest card, and your opponent deletes their highest card. So if they have like a 5, you have you put this in there, and then you actually end up deleting it. But you delete their biggest card. When this card would be covered, first delete the lowest value card of this line. Interesting. Then there's Love, has some interesting things. They actually have a 6. There's no 0 in this deck. But when you do that, your opponent gets to draw 2 cards. This one is you draw the top card of your opponent's deck, so now you have a new card. You're playing in that same line, but it's one of your opponent's abilities, which is cool. And at the end, you can give 1 card from your hand to your opponent. If you do, draw 2 cards, but now they're going to get one of your cards. Here's take a random card from your opponent's hand and give your card. So you're kind of like swapping cards with Love, and you're getting cards from the other person's deck, which is interesting. And those are some of the new cards in the Auxiliary Unit 1. First thing about this game I like, gorgeous art. Oh my gosh, all the different themes or protocols that there are there, they did really good job with the art direction here. It just looks kind of futuristic, it looks cool. Good job there. Card quality, oh my goodness. These cards are amazing. They feel kind of plasticky, but they're very good. You can almost like bend them and they just jump right back to where they were. Almost like those PVC style cards. There was another game called like 4 Northward that used these cards. I think 2 Rooms and a Boom was the first game I saw that used this type of card where they could almost even get wet. I don't know if these ones can get wet. I know that the ones that like 2 Rooms and a Room, they made it because you're holding them the whole time and people's hands are getting sweaty. But this feels like they almost feel like they're waterproof, but they look beautiful. They just feel so good. I wish, like, I like this better than the stamped, what do they call it? The linen cards. Like, those are nice. These are even nicer. I really love these. This game has simple mechanisms, but it's extremely tactical and lots of depth of what's going on. There's lots of abilities that you're doing, right? You're looking at sometimes immediate, sometimes ongoing, and sometimes sort of end abilities that you're going through. And there's all sorts of different actions. So sometimes you're flipping, sometimes you're shifting, sometimes you're removing cards. Now, when you play a card, you're activating that middle ability. But like I just mentioned, there's other abilities and showed you that, some on the top, some on the bottom that trigger at certain times, and they're ongoing persistent abilities and such. But as you're doing that, sometimes you are triggering abilities again. And it's really clever where like, sometimes you're like, oh, I want to trigger this ability again. I'm going to cover it up now. But now this other thing lets me shift a card. I'm going to shift this card off that, trigger that ability again. It's really, really cool. Or sometimes, someone plays a 5. All the 5s have an ability that says like discard a card, right? So someone plays a 5 down there, they have to discard a card to get that powerful card out there, right? They now play a card on top of that. You play something that makes them remove, or you shift that card off, that card triggers again, and now they have to discard a card again. So now they've had to discard twice for that one level 5 card, and it just is really clever. Now, you can, if you have face down cards on your own side, you can look at those, and you can always sort of look at what's underneath being covered. So you can see what might trigger if that card gets moved. I actually tend to cover the cards on just the bottom one because I know which thing's going to then trigger again. I can see it. So it's just a personal preference, but the designer did tell me that you are able to look at what's covered and flip over your own cards to look at the abilities, but then place them back. So that's the open information that you have. I like that you're only being affected by the latest card. So anytime it tells you to do something, you are only being able to affect certain cards, the last one played in each line, or in front of each one. And that's interesting because as you play cards, you are in a sense kind of protecting those cards, unless someone shifts that cards off and now it's no longer protected, but you've got to waste a couple of turns to get rid of that card. And I like that you're not just doing anything, there's some thought going on to that. And it makes you change your tactics into which cards to protect, which ones not to, and things like that. I like that the whole taking control thing, the timing of that is really cool. So if you're ahead in 2 lines at the beginning of your turn, you will take that control. And if the other player has it, you take it back from them, which is awesome. Because now I have it, and now I'm under pressure to kind of use this before they take it back from me, right? And so I might just take it, and then I might then rearrange and draw cards, refresh, draw cards, and then trigger it to rearrange either one of my sets of protocols or one of theirs. Use it before the other player does it. Or maybe it's like the timing's not right. At the beginning of the game, it's not that great to use. It gets worse at the end for the other player if you use it. It becomes more powerful as the game goes on. And so maybe I'm like, I want to wait until somebody compiles something first. Well, sure, you can wait, but then if that other player gets control, at the beginning of their next turn, if they still have control in 2 lines, they got to take it right back from before you get to use it. Interesting timing there. I like that when you compile, it's your whole turn. So this adds interesting strategies where you can force your opponent to basically waste 2 turns to finish compiling. Like maybe they're killing you in something, right? It's like they're up like 8-1 or 8-0, right? They've got to play a card, waste a turn there, not waste, they get to use the ability, but they're playing a card there for a full turn to now get over 10, right? Then their next turn they have to compile, right? And you're like, they basically wasted 2 turns doing that while you're doing other things. Where sometimes it's like, knowing that, you might want to not compile yet and focus on these other things and then try to do try to get a bunch of them at once. Now, even if you could compile 2 lines, you can only compile 1. So that stops you from sort of breaking that rule. So that gives you different strategies. I like that. I like that you're using and drafting different protocols each game. So you're gonna find combos that are fun to play off each other, and that's fun as well. The only negative, this game's fantastic. It's really clever. It's got a lot going on for it. It's very expandable. There's gonna be, I know it's already that 1 mini expansion, but I can see them doing more things. And I've heard about some of the abilities that are coming soon that also sound really clever, gonna give you even more depth. The only negative thing I could say about this game is there is a lot of rule ambiguity in the actual rules that come in the game. Between what's not said in those rules or what's said maybe not the best way, and then having the cards having abilities and stuff, there's a lot of ambiguity. So much so that like the first 2 or 3 times I played this game, I didn't play it 100% correctly. There were certain things that I did a little bit wrong, but they weren't that obvious in the rulebook. But in saving grace, the designer is very active on Board Game Geek. He's even replied to some of my questions, but he's replied to a lot of people's questions, and I'm like, okay, if you kind of have to go through and read some of those rules questions and things to make sure you're playing the game right, because there are some pretty important things that aren't super clear in the rules, which I think could be improved quite a bit. But if you get the rules down right and you spend some time going through Board Game Geek and look at some of the clarifications before you play, and you don't run into some of those pitfalls, you'll be fine. But it is pretty much the only negative thing I have to say to the game. It's really good. I'm looking forward to more of this, and because it's such a nice little portable game that you can just take out, play 2-player. It takes only about 15-20 minutes, but it's really got a lot of depth. You usually want to play it more than once. For all these reasons, it's getting my highest honor. It's getting a Saxophone Serenade, which means I'm keeping it in my gaming library. It's been the Game Boy Geek, breaking down barriers, growing relationships with board games, by helping you find the next one you love. Let's hit it. Game Toppers upgrades every game you play, and their 4.5 Kickstarter introduced the new Galactic Mycroft and Watson Game Toppers with interchangeable rail inlays, as well as new game mats, miniature gaming terrain packs, leg kit options, dining covers, accessories, and amazing package deals. The campaign recently ended, but it's not too late to pledge late at GameToppersLLC.com.